Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here this morning with some very exciting model releases from Games Workshop. I'm really eager to talk about this, and we're going to just kind of dive right into it. But we're going to start. So there are two model releases. One of them is for Bloodbowl and not super serious, but it's so amazing that I have to focus on and talk about it. We're going to do that first, and then we're going to talk about the really serious release for the Lizardmen, for the Seraphon of Age of Sigmar. But it also has a very dramatic impact on the Lizardmen of Fantasy. I think a lot of people are like, oh, cool models, without realizing what exactly they're looking at. So first we're going to start with the goofy fun one, and then we're going to go on to the more serious, impactful one. So without further ado, we're going to first take a look at, there are two new star players for Bloodbowl, and I am so excited for these miniatures. So meet Droll and Dribble. So Droll and Dribble are a pair of skink twins that have been spawned for the sake of Bloodbowl. And yes, one of them is absolutely doing a I'm sneaky and I'm about to stab you pose, and the other one is doing a kung fu kick you in the face, or the nads pose. And they're amazing. So it says, usually when lizardmen spawn, always according to the ancient inscrutable timetable of the old ones, they emerge fully formed, crawling from the spawning pools in their hundreds. Yet when Droll and Dribble arrived in the world, it was as a pair of otherwise unaccompanied twins, an event considered most auspicious indeed by the Slan auguries. And that's true. Even in fantasy lore, spawning pools tend to unleash units or regiments. Like, they unleash almost entire cohorts of lizardmen all at once. So only unleashing two skinks would be seen as a very big deal. You know, generally speaking, if it's like single digits worth of guys, they're huge deals. You know, Krokgar emerged, I want to say, with, I think it was 4 other Saurus, but Krokgar emerged with a very small number of Saurus. Gorok came out by himself. So a lot of really important lizardmen have appeared individually. So a set of twins would be a pretty big deal. So auspicious is certainly the word for this tricksome twosome, unless they're playing for your opponent, because these are two of the dirtiest players to ever participate in Blood Bowl, which it is so hysterical to me that two of the, and we'll get into their actual rules in a second, and I'll talk about their rules because it's so funny, but the fact that two skinks are some of the deadliest, dirtiest bastards in Blood Bowl is so perfect. I'm sure there are so many people who played Warhammer Fantasy Tabletop that are like, oh, the skinks are the most dangerous thing. Yeah, that makes sense. Because just fighting armies where someone's like, all right, I'm going to roll my 600 dice, and for every 6 I get, that's a wound. And, you know, even if you have a 1-up save, like, you're going to roll some ones, you know, even if you only fail on ones, and you get to roll 3 times against, you know, 100, 200 dice, you're probably dead, more than likely. But, so, Drill and Dribble, first of all, their models are absolutely gorgeous. Like, I am going to get these, and I'm going to use them in Fantasy. I don't know what I'm going to use them as, but if you think for a second I'm not going to have these running around in my Lizardman armies, you are sorely mistaken. Because, like, they look like they'd be fighting on a battlefield. I mean, the Kung Fu one is a little extra ridiculous, but Droll is the one with the dagger, and he would fit perfectly. Like, he just looks like a really spooky skink attendant or a really scary skink chief. But A, they have forked tails, and they have red crests. So these two are blessed by Sotek, which is fantastic. So as far as their actual rules are, so we have Droll, who has the stab rule, which is a fantastic rule that really sucks if you get hit by it. So in Blood Bowl, there's a concept, which Blood Bowl is about to be a big thing, because I'm actually going to be playing Blood Bowl today, later on stream. So if you want to see the new Blood Bowl 3 game, make sure to come on by. But in any event, twitch.tv/Loremaster of Sotek. But in any event, stab is basically, in Blood Bowl, there's a concept of armor. So whenever someone gets tackled or falls, like they trip or they get knocked over by someone when trying, like they get tackled while trying to move past an enemy, or they get blocked, which is basically someone runs up and punches them, you roll an armor save. And an armor save is you roll 2 dice, and if the 2 dice combined are higher than your armor save, I think it's equal to or higher than your armor save, then your armor is broken, and you would take an injury, which you would roll on the injury table. And depending on what you roll, you know, you either are merely stunned or you might be all the way up to literally killed. Blood Bowl is a mean game, and there's like a lot of permanent injuries you can take. Like a major injury can result in like permanent stat debuffs, or like losing an eye, or like a broken collarbone, or like just horrible things. And the character is basically useless. So what stab does is a lot of the average armor in the game is around like 7 or 8, because that's the average on 2d6. But many characters have significantly higher armor, from like 9 to 10, which is very difficult to break. But with a stab character, basically stab allows you to run up to a character and you shank them. It's literally a prison shank, and you shank them, which basically allows you to roll to bypass their armor. So if I recall correctly, and this might have changed, Blood Bowl 3 is using the new Blood Bowl rules, not the old Blood Bowl rules. So I'm not sure exactly what's changed, but I believe in the old rules, when you would stab someone, I want to say it was just like a flat 7 or 8, something like that, I think. And I could be wrong. I could be mixing that up with a different rule. But in any event, then you have dribble. So dribble is way nastier. So Dribble has a rule called Dirty Player and Sneaky Get. So those are 2 rules. And his Dirty Player, since it has +1, I'm guessing that just adds 1 to the rolls, what that means. So in Blood Bowl is a game that is meant to make you rage, and it's about playing dirty. Blood Bowl has no concept of fairness. It doesn't give a crap about fairness. So there are explicit rules for fouling opponents. So normally when you knock over an opponent and they go down, you're just supposed to kind of like leave them alone and move on. But if you want, you can foul them. And when you foul a player, it's basically representing that your characters are trying to like sneak past the ref and like stab or kick or punch or beat the person on the ground to try and kill them. You are very explicitly trying to cause them death, or at least very severe harm. So normally when you roll against someone that's been knocked down on the ground, you simply roll 2d6 and see what injury you get. But the more players that are adjacent, they will join in on the beating. So it just basically becomes like just an absolute beatdown. And for every person that joins in on the beating, you get +1 to the roll. So the more people that are beating up that character, the more likely the injury is going to be very severe, because the higher the roll is, the more deadly it is. So if you roll a 12, that person is just dead. But if you have 4 people joining you and you roll an 8, counts as a 12. Dirty Player basically gives you an additional +1 if that player is doing the injury roll. So if Dribble decides to injure you, he like knows what he's doing. So where a regular character is like basically doing the equivalent of like kicking you in the stomach or something, Dribble is more like he's trying to kick you in the throat as hard as he can. So not only does he get a bonus to injuring you when you're already down, which is it's considered like it just is a dick move, but it's part of the game. So like Blood Bowl is one of those games you really have to be in a good headspace and really just laugh at the stupidity. You can't take it seriously because you're going to get tilted. You're going to get so tilted if you take it too seriously. But in any event, so if he tries to injure people, not only is he better at it, but he also has Sneaky Get. So what Sneaky Get is that normally when you roll to injure a player, I believe it's if you roll a double. So like if you roll to injure someone and you roll 2 4s or 2 3s or 2 6s. So normally 2 6s would be great because it means you're going to kill that player, right? But if you roll if you roll any doubles, the ref has noticed that you're fouling and will call you out. So if the ref notices you, the player that is doing the injury gets removed from the game. Essentially, they get kicked from the game, so you can't use them for the rest of the match. And that's whether or not the injury was severe. So if you roll a double 1, not only did you not injure your opponent in any meaningful way, but your guy also gets thrown out of the game. Now you're down a guy. So like fouling it is a risk reward system. However, when you have Sneaky Get, you get a notable bonus to not being noticed by the ref. because he's a sneaky git, so the ref might not necessarily see it. So not only is he meant to injure people, but he's really good at dealing additional injury and avoiding being noticed, which is hysterical. And then to make it even worse, if you play these two together, you get the sneaky pair rule, which I'm just going to call double trouble. If you have both of them on the battlefield, you get sneaky pair as long as they're adjacent to the same opponent. So like if you have one of them, if they're both next to the same enemy, they get +1 on stab and foul rolls. Like, oh my god. Which, yeah, I'm pretty sure stab is just, it's like a flat 7-up or a flat 8-up, where like you roll 2d6 regardless of your opponent's armor, and if you roll higher than your stab requirement, which I think is a 7 or an 8, you immediately injure them, regardless of their armor, which is what makes it like super strong, is that you can run up to a character like a Chaos Warrior of Nurgle, and even though he has really high armor, you can run up and just shank him, and he'll go down. But if you have the two of them adjacent to the same opponent, they get +1 on stab and foul. So basically, he has his dirty player, Dribble's dirty player is going to be twice as effective, and Droll is going to have a significantly easier time stabbing people if you get them adjacent. Which might sound difficult, like, oh, well, okay, I have to get them next to the same person, that might be hard, except it's not, because they have sidestep, which is so good. So sidestep is, I don't know why I'm getting in depth on explaining the rules, but you just have to deal with it. So what sidestep is normally when someone tries to tackle you, or block you is the technical term, because they're attacking you. So a block is an enemy is attacking you deliberately. Normally when someone blocks you, there are vaguely 3 results, which is that they can either push you away, they can hit you so that you take an injury roll and you fall down, or you can both go down. Now when you roll to hit an enemy, there are 2 kinds of knocking them down. There's what's called a stumble, which is basically like you hit their legs or something, so they stumble and fall over. And there's I think it's called a takedown, which is that you like lay them out. And the difference is that if you stumble someone, if they have the dodge rule, which these skinks do have the dodge rule, they treat a stumble as if it was a push. So you don't get to injure them, you don't get to knock them down, you just push them away. However, these 2 assholes have sidestep, which sidestep means that normally when you push someone, you have to push them like in one of 3 directions in the direction that you were blocking them. So like if I'm coming straight at you, I could either push you straight back, I could push you back to the left, or put back to the right, in like a grid, right? So I can push you one of those 3 directions. However, if you have sidestep, you get to decide where you're pushed instead of me getting to decide where you're pushed. So I push you that way, you could decide to go right next to me, because you're moving 1 space, go adjacent, and end up, this direction's better, right next to me. Which is very frustrating when you're dealing with that, because it makes those characters very sticky and hard to get away from. And with these 2, it means that their buff is virtually going to be always active and impossible to get away from. So it says that they cost 190,000 gold pieces to hire, which is very expensive, and they can play for the Lustrian Super League, which is Amazon's as well as Lizardman. So very excited for these 2. I think they are going to be an absolute ton of fun, and their minis are just hilarious. They have beautiful minis. The Bloodbowl sculpts are all 10 out of 10. Like, every single Bloodbowl sculpt I've seen is absolutely gorgeous. The star players, the big guys, and the regular teams. I really need to get into a in-person Bloodbowl league in my area, because I want to play so bad. But that's why we're going to be playing Blood Bowl 3 today. All right. So, on to the main event for today, which is the, I'm going to mute this because GW normally likes to play music that we're not allowed to have. So, this video is showing off the new, I hate this website. Come on, you can do it. No, you can't do it? Okay, whatever, fine. So, there's a new Salamander model, which I'm so excited, but this is even more awesome than you think it is. And it's also kind of hilarious. So it says, immortalize your enemies with the sizzling Seraphon spawn of Chotec. So it says, just as the old one's great plan foretold, the mortal realms have aligned once again and delivered a glimpse of a spectacular new Saurian, this time a sacred beast, creating the image of the incandescent Chotec the Invigorator. So Chotec is the old one of the sun. He represents Sol, the sun from Lizardman culture, and he represents warmth, invigorating energy, and is often thought of as a war god as well. And he's he's this fiery, incandescent entity. So it says, found in the most volcanic regions of the mortal realms and hence all over Akshi, where they're often hunted by fire slayers, the spawn of Chotec are fire-spitting salamanders, which the Seraphon reveres the offspring of the sun god himself. So these salamanders obviously are not spawned in spawning pools. These ones are supposedly native to the mortal realms, most notably Akshi, which is the realm of fire. And the lizardmen have basically been taking them in and then, raising them, which is how all of the dinosaurs are. The lizardmen obviously are only comprised of Skinks, Saurus, Slon, and Croxagores. Everything else in the roster are native fauna that have been kind of co-opted by the lizardmen. And we're going to read through the whole article, and then I'm going to come back to why this is very significant, other than new salamander mini. Listen, the old salamanders, they were pretty cool looking, but they're ancient. They're so old. And this salamander is actually far more reminiscent of the original salamander, and also I feel like is a really cool, even better version of the creative scope. The salamander we got last edition, their fins were very subdued. They have these fins coming off their heads, and then off their backs, but they're very small in the modern sculpt, which we got in 7th edition. The 6th edition salamander, or actually the 5th edition salamanders, which are the original ones, had these giant back fins like this one does. So they had these huge fins on their backs. And the ones in Total War were kind of combining those two ideas. And then this one basically is like, nah, fam, we're going whole hog, and we're going to make this thing really crazy looking. But it says, the sun acolytes who handled these sour-templed salamanders are marked for their duty from birth. When the stars flare and the spawning pools boil, the skinks who emerge are blessed with incredible resistance to heat, as well as frills that resemble Chotec's own sunburst. So obviously they have the frills to look like a sunburst, or the sun's glare when it's coming over the horizon, or is barely visible, and you have that big burst of light. So that's why it looks like that. In between burning sacrificial victims alive, these disciples are tasked with raising salamanders, then sedating them with crawtoad venom and fitting old one technology into their skulls, which you can see they got these little an Avenger, yes, Captain America, how in the movies they always press their fingers to their ears so they can talk to each other. Let's see. These precious relics allow the sun acolytes to direct their chloric charges with light-emitting staves. So here you can see that these staffs have little things on them. Apparently they are able to shoot light beams, especially this guy, where it looks like the sun is supposed to come down, and then he literally fires a little laser beam out of this thing here, which leads to this hysterical line. When a skink handler marks a foe with a dot of ruby-tinted light, the spawn of Chotec hawks a vicious glob of flame acid at the target. The ensuing splatter not only ignites immediately, it's caustic enough to leave victims vulnerable to further attacks. They're fucking cats. They are literally cat monsters. The skinks are literally pulling out a damn laser pointer and going boop, right at the opponent, who's like, oh, there's a dot, and then they just get immolated. Which is so good. I also am really glad that the salamanders are staying true to their original lustrian form, in the sense that they do not shoot fire, they shoot acid that is just so it's so reactive that when it comes in contact with the air, it ignites. Which is how salamanders have always worked. So I'm glad they're not just breathing fire. They are still breathing acid, which is so much worse than fire, even though it may not sound like it, because with the acid is very sticky and it sticks to you, and so you're stuck in it and you're just burning alive. And also it melts through armor. So here we can actually see their no profile. They have a 24-inch range. That is so fucking far. That is a huge range. That is a ridiculous range for a shooting attack. in Age of Sigmar. Like there are some long range AOS attacks, but for a creature that's going that is a crazy range. I have ghosts in my Age of Sigmar army who have crossbows. They have a 12-inch range. These guys are spitting loogies way further than I can shoot my bows. But they get, it's 1 attack, 4s to hit, 2s to wound, -2 rend, and d6 damage. Whew, that -2 rend, that is nasty. And then if any wounds are caused by attacks made by Glob of Flame, you get -1 to save rolls for that unit until the end of the turn, which is very, very strong. So basically, you open your shooting phase with the Glob of Flame Acid to hopefully ping the target and get their save reduced by 1, and then you follow up with further shooting attacks or even close combat, because you could shoot someone and then obviously you can have your melee units wail on them, and since they're stuck in combat with that -1 save, that is huge. Reducing saves is like god tier in Age of Sigmar. It's one of the most important things. That's not their only trick. Foes who stray too close may find out what happens when skinks feed their pet salamander some tasty emberstone treats. Which I'm curious to see what that's going to be. So it sounds like they may have like an optional rule to be fed Emberstone, which buffs them for a temporary period. Which Emberstone is the realm stone of the realm of Akshi. So it's like, you kind of think of it like Warpstone, except for instead of Warpstone being dark magic that's coalesced into a physical, like a interactable form, Emberstone is the wind of fire compressed into an interactable material. But here's what I really want to talk about, which is how absolutely gorgeous and genius this new design is. Because you may not realize it, but for the Lizardmen of Warhammer Fantasy and the Seraphon, this is a huge deal. This is a huge deal. Because do you notice what's so exotic about these skinks, right? They're crests. They have a very unique head shape where they instead of having the typical crest that starts here and just goes kind of straight back like a fin, they have like horizontal fins instead of more, I don't know, instead of like this way, it's this way. So this is massive, because what they're basically saying is that these are spawn of Chotec skinks. So in 6th edition Warhammer Fantasy, Lizardmen, which were very fun because you could customize them, there was a concept known as sacred spawnings. So, and these are obviously noted or like referred to very heavily in Total War Warhammer with our blessed spawnings, though I still very strongly feel that blessed spawnings and sacred spawnings are different. And I would really like to get sacred spawnings added into the game. But what sacred spawnings were is you could choose to make a unit or a character in your army a sacred spawning of a particular old one. So for instance, you could take the sacred spawning of Chotec. And if you took the sacred spawning of oh god, I can't even remember what Chotec's was. Hold on. Bother me. I can grab it. Ah, there we are. See, the sacred spawning of Chotec. So the sacred spawning of Chotec was you rolled extra dice when pursuing. So basically, if enemies tried to run away from you, you had a much more reliable chance of catching them. But there were like fun little descriptions where the blessed spawning of Chotec. The heat of the sun burns within the bodies of those blessed by the solar god Chotec, filling them with energy at times when other cold-blooded creatures become sluggish. A fiery red-orange is Chotec's associated color. So basically, the way these worked is that when Lizardmen of a sacred spawning would emerge, or actually, no, they were called blessed spawnings. Well, okay. Sacred spawnings is the term of the rules, but you would be a blessed spawning of blank. But yeah, you know what I mean. But anyway, so the blessed spawning of Chotec, these are blessed spawnings of Chotec. They have a very unique appearance. They have unique frills. They have orange coloring instead of typical coloring. And they also have unique characteristics where it literally says that they are, yeah, the skinks who emerge are blessed with incredible resistance to heat. So they have essentially blessed spawning rules, being that they're fire resistant or flame resistant, And then on top of that, they have the unique frills. This is a huge fucking deal because this means that we very well could be seeing Games Workshop putting out official new miniatures that represent the different sacred spawnings when appropriate. So, like right now, we've got Blessed Spawning of Chotec and these Skinks, but we might also get to see like Blessed Spawnings of Sotek, which we kind of have them, but we don't really have like true red-crested Skinks right now, but they might get a much more iconic appearance. Granted, Blessed Spawnings of Sotek are usually marked by having the split tail, though that's not always an indication of Sotek. Sometimes it appears to be an indication of just general Old One blessings. But you have, we could see Blessed Spawnings of Hanchi, the Jaguar God, or Zunki, the Water God, or Tepak, the Inscrutable, Quetzal, the Warrior God of Protection, Itzel, the God of the Horned the Tri-Horned God of Beasts. Like, there are so many cool things they could do. We know, like, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 original blessed spawnings associated with a particular old one, and then there's a 9th one, which is basically just Gorok. The 9th one is that you're albino, which is why it tended to be associated with Nakai and Gorok. Granted, Nakai doesn't really seem to be considered truly albino anymore. I don't know if it seems that that's really just Gorok's thing now, whereas Nakai's thing is that he's just very, very old, to the point that he's kind of pale, but he's not true albino. But I've always liked the idea of Nakai being a sacred or a blessed spawning of Quetzal, the protection god, because that would fit him very much, especially because Quetzal is one of the 2, technically 3, but most notably 2 warrior gods. The other one being Tlangsha, who is the like more aggressive warrior god, which is why Krokgar wields his spear. But in any event, this is very, very exciting because these are blessed spawnings that have unique designs, unique miniatures. Literally, the only thing I would change about these guys is that in the kind of the OG lore, granted, it was because that was the only way to really represent it, but in the OG lore, you would have a strip of scales down their back, these little back scales they have. You would paint like a line of some of them a color to match with the frill to really stand them out. But since they have completely unique head crests to mark them as sacred spawnings of Chotec, you don't need to do that anymore. I am super fucking excited for these miniatures. They look amazing. I cannot wait to use these in fantasy. I cannot wait to use them in Age of Sigmar. I am beyond excited for these. I'm definitely probably going to be picking up 3 kits as soon as they come out. And the fact that they're just big cats, like imagine playing like a home invader comes into your house and you just like lean over, grab your laser pointer and aim it at the guy who comes in your house, and your cat just immediately responds by immolating them, by like you hawking a fiery hairball at them. It's so funny. I'm really excited to see the rest of their rules, and I'm also excited to continue to see reveals. The fact that we got new salamanders is extremely exciting. I really hope this is a dual kit to build Razordons as well. Salamanders and Razordons were essentially built using the same overall design. They weren't a true dual kit because they were released in metal, so metal came in like blister packs. They came in like these little red packs. So you couldn't like buy a salamander and build it as a Razordon, but you could tell that they used similar sculpts to make them. That being said, I also would be totally fine with them having very different designs, so maybe they shouldn't be a dual pack. But in any event, I really hope we get a new Razordon sculpt as well as the new Salamander sculpt. I'm curious if they did do Razordons, if they would give us another different old one, because Chotec's not associated with Razordons. So I would be very excited. Actually, now that I think about it, we got the modern Salamander sculpt in 6th edition. Yeah, we got the original Salamanders in 5th edition with the giant frill, and then the modern Salamanders came out in 6th. Yeah, with the little head things, where their head was more like, it was like their frill or hair was like slicked back. And then we got Razordons, I think, in 7th edition. Yeah, but very excited for this. I would love to see Razordons. If I had to guess which old one they would associate them with, it would probably be Hanchi, the Jaguar god, who's also kind of like the god of shadows, who's more about like sneakiness. I could see him kind of being well associated with them, and that they're kind of like ambush hunters, or they're very but I don't know. I could see the argument for Quetzal or Quetzal. Like I could see Quetzal being a very good, because he's so defensive, and the way Razordons work is that if something approaches them aggressively, they enter like a defensive stance, like a skunk. Except for instead of spraying you, they do a muscle spasm that causes all those spikes to go like right into your face. So maybe it'll be Quetzal. But I'm still, this Seraphon re-release, this is not a Seraphon update. This is a Seraphon range refresh, which is insanely fucking exciting. I did not think 3rd edition was going to give us a Seraphon range refresh. I would never in my mind did I even consider that a possibility. I thought we were going to be stuck with all of the Lizardman minis pretty much until the old world, and then we'd start getting updates. But the fact that it looks like pretty much everything in the range that was severely needing updates seems like it's going to be updated, I hold out a lot of hope. The only other 2 things that I'm dearly, desperately hoping for, besides Razordons, are Cold One Riders or Cold One Knights. So Cold One Riders being sacred spawnings of Itzel. So Itzel, who is the old one known as the Tri-Horned Beast, he is the old one of beasts. And in the old lore, to ride a creature, you had to have his sacred spawning, or his blessed spawning. If you did not have the blessing of Itzel, you could not ride a monster, or a cold one. You had to have it. And those Saurus were spawned with a unique appearance. Back in the old days, because they didn't, I guess, want to make their models too distinct, the only extra thing is they had like an extra set of dew claws on their legs that allowed them to hook their legs into the actual cold one's flesh, which the cold one didn't feel it, because cold ones are like inured to pain because they're so stupid. But it allowed them to like grip and hold on to it. You know, they didn't need traditional saddles. So I am very, 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 very hopeful we're going to get new Cold One Rider sculpts, and they're going to have like the full-on blessed spawning of Itzel, which will hopefully give them unique head crests, as well as the dew claws, and then croc scores. Please, God, croc scores. Granted, I don't hate modern croc scores. I just don't like that they're made out of plastic, or they're not made out of plastic. But in any event, that's gonna be it for me. I've rambled a lot longer than I'm into on this, but I am super fucking excited, and this is a big deal. Their heads are so interestingly shaped, because they've also got like almost like little bulbous foreheads, in addition to the unique crest. But let me know what y'all think down below. Are you really excited for the new Lizardmen? Are you interested to see like what they're gonna do, what's gonna become of them? Do let me know. And I'm really excited for what next week's reveals will bring for us. So thank you all for watching, and I'll come watch me play Bloodbowl. Come watch. Thank you. Bye.